A boy walks into a royal household. He is nobody. His father is a minor knight from Gascony, no land worth mentioning, no name that opens doors. But somehow, this boy is about to change the course of English history. This is a true story. It begins around the year 1300 in the household of Prince Edward, heir to the throne of England. The prince is 16, so is the boy assigned to his household, Piers Gaveston. No one expected what would happen next. They became inseparable. Some medieval chroniclers called it brotherly love. Others whispered it was something more. What we know for certain is this. Prince Edward would later refer to Piers, in his own words, as my brother. And Edward's father, King Edward I, noticed immediately. He didn't approve. The king watched his son shower this landless foreign knight with gifts, attention, favor that should have gone to nobility. So in 1305, the king made a decision. He banished Piers Gaveston from court. Not because of anything Piers had done, because of what the prince kept doing for him. It was meant to be a lesson, a punishment for the prince's excess. Instead, it planted something far more dangerous. Because the moment King Edward I died, the moment his son took the throne as Edward II, the very first thing the new king did was call Piers home. Not just home. Within weeks, Edward gave him a title reserved almost exclusively for royal blood, Earl of Cornwall. A landless Gascon knight, now outranked men whose families had held titles for generations. And across England, in castles and manor halls, the barons of the realm felt something shift, something that would not sit right with them. Not for long. Because a king's love, given this openly, this fast, to a man with no noble blood, was not going to go unanswered. By 1308, Piers Gaveston isn't just the king's favorite. He's regent of England. Edward II sails to France to marry a 12-year-old princess named Isabella, and in his absence he hands the entire kingdom to Piers. Not to a brother, not to an experienced lord, not to anyone the barons expected. To him. The barons are furious, but worse is coming. When Edward returns with his bride, he holds the coronation, the most important ceremony of his reign. Picture the hall. Nobles from across England gathered under gold and candlelight. The new queen, 12 years old, in a foreign country, about to be crowned beside her husband. And seated in the place of honor, right beside the king, is not Isabella. It's Piers. Chroniclers recorded that Edward paid him more attention that day than his own bride. Isabella's family, French nobility who'd crossed the sea for this, were so insulted they turned around and walked out. This wasn't just an insult to a young queen. It was a message to every powerful family in England. Piers Gaveston answers to no one but the king. And Piers didn't help his own case. He gave the barons mocking nicknames, sometimes behind their backs, sometimes to their faces. He outperformed them in tournaments, humiliated them in front of their own men. Foolish, some historians call it, not malicious, just reckless. But reckless is enough when the men you're mocking command armies. By April, the barons bring one demand to Parliament. Banish Gaveston, for good. Edward, cornered, compromises. He sends Piers away, not into disgrace, but into power. Lord Lieutenant of Ireland. Distance, not defeat. Piers governed well there. Even his critics admitted that much. But that was never really the point, because everyone in that room knew something the barons refused to say out loud. The king wasn't done bringing him home. 1309. Piers Gaveston comes home again. Some of the barons had actually allowed it. A truce, worked out on paper. It didn't last. The moment Piers returned, chroniclers wrote that he became more insolent than ever. The same arrogance, The same mocking nicknames, the same closeness with the king that no baron in England could compete with. And this time the barons weren't interested in negotiating. In 1311, 21 powerful nobles and bishops forced the king's hand. They called themselves the Ordainers. Their reforms would reshape how England was governed, but everyone in that room knew their real target was one man. Their demand was simple: Gaveston leaves, permanently, never to return. Edward had no army strong enough to refuse them, so Piers went into exile once more. It wasn't his first exile. It wouldn't be his last. And then he did something that would cost him everything. He came back anyway. By January 1312, only weeks after leaving, Piers Gaveston was back in England. Edward declared the banishment unlawful, restored his titles, his lands. It was as close to a declaration of war as a king could make without drawing a sword. This time, there would be no more warnings. The Earl of Lancaster raised an army and marched north to hunt them down. In May, Edward and Piers were nearly caught together at Newcastle. They fled by sea, in a hurry, leaving behind money, soldiers, supplies, everything they couldn't carry in time. They ran to Scarborough Castle, a grim fortress on the cliffs, walls facing the open sea. The castle's stores wouldn't last long, and there Edward made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He left Piers behind with a thin garrison and rode to York to raise reinforcements. He never saw him alive again. Scarborough Castle is surrounded. Piers has no food to withstand a siege, no army large enough to break out. So he does the only thing left. He surrenders, but only under one condition. He writes to the Earl of Pembroke, a man known across England for his honor. Pembroke swears an oath. Piers will not be harmed. On May 19th, Piers Gaveston gives himself up. Pembroke keeps his word, at first. He escorts Piers south toward safety, toward the king. They stop for the night in a small town called Deddington, and Pembroke makes one mistake. He leaves, just for a night, to visit his wife nearby. He leaves Piers behind, guarded but exposed. That single night is all his enemies need. The Earl of Warwick, a man Piers had once mocked with a cruel nickname, seizes his chance. He storms the lodging, takes Piers prisoner, marches him straight to Warwick Castle. No honor, no oath, no mercy. What follows is barely a trial. The outcome was decided before it began. They lead him out to a hill just beyond the castle grounds, Blacklow Hill. 2 men run him through with swords. Then, because he was, after everything, still a noble, they finish it with a blade to the neck. His body is left where he fell. It would take years and a formal pardon from the church before he could even be properly buried. When word reached King Edward, he was undone, grief-stricken, furious. He swore revenge on every man responsible. It would take him a decade. But he kept that promise. The Earl of Lancaster, the man who led the plot, eventually met his own execution on Edward's orders. Here's what the story of Piers Gaveston actually teaches. It's not really about love or scandal or even betrayal. It's about what happens when power is given faster than trust can be earned. Piers didn't fall because he was loved. He fell because everyone around him needed someone to blame for a king who wouldn't share his crown.